Disc 6.
Blame for this debacle can only be laid at the door of an overzealous and irrational EPA, permitting the use of corn for one purpose, animal feed, and not another, human consumption, and then mandating absolute purity in food is, as is now amply apparent, absurd. Let us be clear that if contamination is defined as the presence of a single molecule of a foreign substance, then every morsel of our food is contaminated with lead, with DDT, with bacterial toxins, and a host of other scary things. What matters from the point of view of public health is the concentration level of these substances, which can range from the negligible to the lethal. It should also be considered a reasonable requirement in labeling something a contaminant that there be at least minimal evidence of demonstrable detriment to health. Starlink has never been shown to harm anyone, not even a laboratory rat. The only positive outcome of this whole sorry episode has been a change in EPA policy abolishing split permits. An agriculture product will hereafter be approved for all food-related uses or not. That the anti-GM food lobby is most powerful in Europe is no accident. Europeans, the British in particular, have good reason both to be suspicious about what is in their food and to distrust what they are told about it. In 1984, a farmer in the south of England first noticed that one of his cows was behaving strangely. By 1993, 100,000 British cattle had died from a new brain disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, commonly known as mad cow disease. Government ministers scrambled to assure the public that the disease, probably transmitted in cow fodder derived from remnants of slaughtered animals, was not transmissible to humans. By February 2002, 106 Britons had died from the human form of BSE. They had been infected by eating BSE-contaminated meat. The insecurity and distrust generated by BSE has spilled over into the discussion of GM foods, dubbed by the British press Frankenfoods. As Friends of the Earth announced in a press release in April 1997, after BSE, you'd think the food industry would know better than to slip hidden ingredients down people's throats. But that, more or less, is exactly what Monsanto was planning to do in Europe. Certain the anti-GM food campaign was merely a passing distraction. Management pressed ahead with its plans to bring GM products to European supermarket shelves. It was to prove a major miscalculation. Through 1998, the consumer backlash gained momentum. Headline writers at the British tabloids had a field day. GM foods are playing games with nature. If cancer is the only side effect, we will be lucky. Astonishing deceit of GM food giant. Mutant crops. Prime Minister Tony Blair's half-hearted defense merely provoked tabloid scorn. The prime monster, fury, as Blair says, I eat Frankenstein food, and it's safe. In March 1999, the British supermarket chain Marks & Spencer announced that it would not carry GM food products, and soon Monsanto's European biotech dreams were in jeopardy. Not surprisingly, other food retailers took similar actions. It made good sense to show supersensitivity to consumer concerns, and no sense at all to stick one's neck out in support of an unpopular American multinational. It was around this time of the Frankenfood maelstrom in Europe that news of the Terminator gene and Monsanto's plans to dominate the global seed market began to circulate on the home front. With much of the opposition orchestrated by environmental groups, the company's attempts to defend itself were hamstrung by its own past. Having started out as a producer of pesticides, Monsanto was loath to incur the liability of explicitly renouncing these chemicals as environmental hazards. Yet one of the greatest virtues of both Roundup Ready and BT Technologies is the extent to which they reduce the need for herbicides and insecticides. The official industry line since the 1950s had been that proper use of the right pesticides harmed neither the environment nor the farmer applying them. Monsanto still could not now admit that Rachel Carson had been right all along. Unable to simultaneously condemn pesticides and sell them, the company could not make use of one of the most compelling of arguments in defense of the use of biotechnology on the farm. Monsanto was never able to reverse this unfortunate momentum. In April 2000, the company effected a merger, but its partner, the pharmaceutical giant Pharmacia and Upjohn, was primarily interested in acquiring Monsanto's drug division, Searle. The agricultural business, later spun off as an independent entity, still exists today under the name Monsanto. Gone, however, are the company's pioneering bravado and aura of invincibility. The GM Foods debate has conflated two distinct sets of issues. First, there have been the purely scientific questions of whether GM foods pose a threat to our health or to the environment. Second, there are economic and political questions centered on the practices of aggressive multinational companies and the effects of globalization. Much of the rhetoric has focused on agribusiness, Monsanto in particular. Having seemed throughout the 1990s to view the technology as little more than a means of dominating the world food supply, the company may indeed have harbored unwholesome dreams of becoming the Microsoft of the food industry. But since its stunning reversal of fortunes, this aspect of the controversy has been rendered largely baseless. It is not likely that another company with as much to lose will stumble into the same minefield. A meaningful evaluation of GM food should be based on scientific considerations, not political or economic ones. Let us, therefore, review some of the common claims. It ain't natural. While virtually no human being, save the very few remaining genuine hunter-gatherers, eats a strictly natural diet. Pache Prince Charles, who famously declared in 1998 that this kind of genetic modification takes mankind into realms that belong to God. Our ancestors have in fact been fiddling in these realms for eons. Early plant breeders often crossed different species, bringing into existence entirely new ones with no direct counterparts in nature. Wheat, for example, is the product of a whole series of crosses. Einkorn wheat, a naturally occurring progenitor, crossed with a species of goat grass, produced emmer wheat, and the bread wheat we know was produced by a subsequent crossing of emmer with yet another goat grass. Our wheat is thus a combination, perhaps one nature would have never devised, of the characteristics of all these ancestors. Furthermore, crossing plants in this way results in the wholesale generation of genetic novelty. Every gene is affected, often with unforeseeable effects. Biotechnology, by contrast, allows us to be much more precise in introducing new genetic material into plant species, one gene at a time. It is the difference between traditional agriculture's genetic sledgehammer and biotech's genetic